Martha Washington, a spirited 78-year-old woman, has spent decades as a beacon of resilience in her Atlanta neighborhood. Having marched alongside Dr. King during the civil rights era, her life has been a testament to perseverance and dignity. Proud of her son, Judge Michael Washington, she cherishes their close bond and her role as a matriarch in her community. But one fateful afternoon, her peaceful existence is shattered when police arrive, responding to a report that unjustly labels her a suspect. What follows is a confrontation that reveals the deep-seated prejudices still present in society and the strength of a mother's spirit and a son's commitment to justice. As Martha faces a harrowing moment, she realizes the importance of standing up for herself and her community, leading to a courageous decision that will ignite change. Join us as we explore Martha's journey from serenity to conflict and ultimately to empowerment in her fight for justice and equality. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Martha Washington, a resilient 78-year-old black woman with silver hair that glimmered in the sunlight and kind eyes that sparkled with the wisdom of a lifetime, sat on the porch of her modest yet welcoming home on the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia. Her weathered hands, each crease and line telling stories of years of hard work and dedication, gently rocked the old wooden chair back and forth. As she gazed out at the street she had called home for more than 50 years, a sense of nostalgia washed over her. Born in the segregated South of the 1940s, Martha's life had unfolded against the backdrop of a tumultuous era. She had witnessed and lived through the profound struggles of the civil rights movement, raising her family at a time when equality was a distant dream for many. With courage in her heart, she had marched alongside the esteemed Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., facing down fire hoses and police dogs, embodying the spirit of resilience. Throughout it all, Martha instilled in her children the invaluable values of perseverance, dignity, and education, principles she believed were the keys to unlocking a brighter future. Among her greatest sources of pride was her son, Michael Washington. Despite the odds stacked against him, Michael had risen from their humble beginnings to become one of the most respected judges in the state of Georgia. At 50 years old, he was renowned not only for his unwavering commitment to justice, but also for his exceptional ability to see beyond the barriers of race and socioeconomic status within the courtroom. Yet, amid his success, Michael never forgot where he came from. Every Sunday without fail, he visited Martha, bringing with him bags of groceries and spending hours listening to her stories, absorbing her wisdom like a sponge. For her part, Martha had kept his childhood room exactly as it had been, a heartfelt shrine to the dreams she had nurtured in her only son, a testament to the love and hope that had fueled their journey. The neighborhood surrounding Martha had undergone significant changes over the years. Once a tight-knit black community, it was slowly transforming as gentrification took hold. New, predominantly white families began moving in, often bringing renovation projects and rising property values that felt both promising and unsettling. Martha observed these shifts with a blend of curiosity and concern, always welcoming new neighbors with a warm smile while remaining wary of the changing dynamics that accompanied them. Despite the evolution of her surroundings, Martha remained a steadfast pillar of the community. She devoted her time to volunteering at the local church, tended to a small vegetable garden that she happily shared with her neighbors, and was perpetually ready with a kind word or a home-cooked meal for anyone in need. Her house, adorned with peeling paint yet surrounded by well-tended flower beds, stood as a poignant reminder of a bygone era, a contrast to the newly renovated homes that dotted the street. On this particular afternoon, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, Martha settled into her porch chair with a glass of sweet tea in hand, savoring the warm breeze that danced through the air. She watched the world go by with a sense of contentment, nodding hello to Mrs. Peterson, a newcomer to the street who was out walking her small poodle. However, Martha couldn't help but notice how Mrs. Peterson quickened her pace as she passed by, clutching her purse a little tighter against her side. A sigh escaped Martha's lips, a weight of similar experiences pressing heavily upon her shoulders. Yet, with an indomitable spirit, she straightened her back, lifted her chin, and continued to rock gently in her chair, reminding herself that she had weathered far worse storms in her lifetime. Little did she know, The events about to unfold would once again test her resilience and shake the very foundations of her quiet life. Just then, the peaceful afternoon was shattered by the piercing wail of police sirens. Martha's eyes snapped open, her tranquil reverie abruptly interrupted as she watched two police cruisers speed down her quiet street, their tires screeching to a halt in front of Mrs. Peterson's house, 3 doors down. Martha's heart began to race, a sense of foreboding settling in as memories of past encounters with law enforcement flooded back, each one a stark reminder of the struggle she had faced. She watched intently as 3 officers, 2 white men and a Hispanic woman, emerged from their vehicles, their hands hovering near their holsters as they approached Mrs. Peterson, who was gesticulating wildly on her front lawn, her face a mix of panic and frustration. Straining to hear, Martha caught snippets of their conversation. "Suspicious person, lurking around, doesn't belong here." A chilling realization washed over her as she understood that Mrs. Peterson was pointing directly at her house, casting a shadow of suspicion that echoed the very prejudices Martha had fought against her entire life. Before Martha could fully comprehend the unfolding situation, she noticed the officers striding purposefully towards her porch, their serious expressions a stark contrast to the tranquil afternoon she had been enjoying. Gripping the arms of her rocking chair, she felt a surge of determination wash over her as she willed her hands to remain steady. Whatever was coming, she would face it with the strength that had seen her through countless challenges over the years. "Ma'am," called out the lead officer, a burly man with close-cropped hair and piercing cold blue eyes that seemed to scrutinize her every move as he approached. "We've had a report of suspicious activity in the area. Mind if we ask you a few questions?" Martha straightened in her chair, drawing upon the dignity that had served her well throughout her long life. "Not at all, officer," she replied, her voice steady even as fear coursed through her veins like ice water. "Though I must admit, I'm not sure what assistance I can provide. I've just been sitting here, enjoying the warmth of the afternoon sun and the sounds of nature around me." As the lead officer spoke, the younger female officer, who seemed more empathetic in her approach, stepped forward with a furrowed brow. "Ma'am, we received a report from a resident who mentioned seeing someone matching your description walking around the neighborhood, peering into windows. Can you account for your whereabouts over the past hour?" Martha's eyes widened in disbelief at the accusation. "Young lady, I assure you, I have been right here on this porch since shortly after lunch. I haven't moved from this spot, let alone gone wandering through the neighborhood. At my age, that would be quite a feat, and I wouldn't be so careless about it." If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. The third officer, who had remained silent up to this point, snorted derisively, his expression one of skepticism. "Yeah, right. Look, lady, we've got a witness who says otherwise. Why don't you just come clean and tell us what you were really up to?" A surge of indignation welled up inside Martha, igniting a fire in her chest. "Young man," she said, her voice rising slightly with her frustration, "I have lived in this house for over 50 years. I have no need or desire to look into anyone's windows. I am a law-abiding citizen, and I resent the implication that I would ever engage in any kind of criminal activity." As she spoke, the lead officer's demeanor shifted, his posture becoming more aggressive and confrontational. "Listen here," he said, his voice low and threatening. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Just admit you were casing the houses, and we can sort this out down at the station. It'll save you a lot of trouble." Martha felt her hands begin to tremble, but her voice remained firm and unwavering. "I have done nothing wrong, and I have no intention of going anywhere with you. If you have any further questions, I suggest you ask them right here on my porch, where I am comfortable and able to defend myself." As tension filled the air, the situation quickly escalated. The officers, frustrated by Martha's refusal to comply with their increasingly aggressive demands, began to question her right to be in the neighborhood. They insisted on seeing proof of residence and identification, their earlier professionalism slipping away as they took on a more combative tone. The peaceful atmosphere of the afternoon had shifted dramatically, replaced by an uncomfortable confrontation that left Martha feeling cornered and anxious. I don't carry my ID with me just to sit on my porch, Martha retorted, her patience fraying like an old rope. Her voice, though steady, carried an edge of indignation. My name is Martha Washington, and as I've mentioned before, I've lived in this very house for over half a century. If you doubt my word, you're more than welcome to check the property records. They will confirm everything I've said. The lead officer's expression shifted, darkening with barely concealed anger. All right, that's enough. If you refuse to cooperate, we'll have no choice but to take you in for obstruction of justice. Stand up slowly and place your hands behind your back. Martha's heart raced violently in her chest as the reality of the situation sank in. She thought of her son, Michael, and the countless lessons in dignity and resistance she had imparted to him over the years. With a deep, steadying breath, she made her choice. I will not comply, she declared, her voice ringing out clear and resolute, echoing with the strength of her convictions. I have done absolutely nothing wrong, and I refuse to be treated like a criminal in my own home. If you want to arrest me, you will have to physically remove me from this porch, and I assure you, I will not go quietly. The officers exchanged furtive glances, their expressions revealing surprise at the fierce defiance radiating from this elderly woman. As they debated their next steps, Martha silently prayed for strength, hoping for someone, anyone, to bear witness to the injustice unfolding before them and to intervene. Unbeknownst to her, the situation was on the brink of a dramatic shift that would send shockwaves through the local law enforcement and reverberate throughout the entire community. As the tension on Martha's porch reached a boiling point, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb with quiet authority. The officers, so engrossed in their confrontation with Martha, hardly registered the vehicle's arrival until a commanding voice sliced through the charged atmosphere. What exactly is happening here? All heads turned to see a tall, distinguished black man in his early 50s striding purposefully toward the porch. His impeccably tailored suit and commanding presence immediately captured attention, demanding respect. Martha's expression transformed, relief and pride flooding her features. "Michael," she called out, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "Thank God you're here." Sensing a shift in the dynamics, the lead officer stepped forward, his posture attempting to assert authority. "Sir, this is a police matter. I'm going to have to ask you to step back." Michael's gaze sharpened as he absorbed the scene. His elderly mother, visibly shaken yet defiant, surrounded by aggressive officers on her property. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but it carried an undercurrent of barely restrained fury. "Officer, I am Judge Michael Washington of the Georgia Superior Court," he announced, his tone leaving no room for doubt. He gestured toward Martha, a protective pride swelling in his chest. "This is my mother. Now, I suggest you explain to me why you're harassing an elderly woman in her own home before I start making some calls that none of you will relish." The impact of his words was immediate and palpable. The color drained from the officers' faces as they grappled with the reality of who they were confronting. The lead officer's aggressive demeanor crumbled, replaced by a dawning panic that spread through the ranks, leaving them momentarily speechless. "Judge Washington," he stammered, his voice wavering with uncertainty. We had no idea. There was a report of suspicious activity in the neighborhood and—" Michael cut him off sharply, raising a hand to emphasize his point. "And you automatically assume that my mother, a woman who has been a respected resident of this neighborhood for over 50 years, is the suspect based on what evidence exactly?" The thought ignited a fire within him, a deep sense of injustice. As the officers fumbled for explanations, their confidence slipping away, a small crowd of neighbors began to gather, drawn by the escalating commotion. Among them was Mrs. Peterson, who stood at the periphery, looking decidedly uncomfortable as the situation unfolded. Michael, noticing her hesitation, called out with a voice that rang clear through the air, "Ma'am, were you the one who made this report?" With an uncertain expression, Mrs. Peterson stepped forward, her demeanor shifting under the weight of scrutiny. I did call the police. I saw someone I didn't recognize walking around, and with all the break-ins lately, I thought it was my duty to report it," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. And did this person you saw bear any resemblance to my mother? Michael asked, his tone dangerously calm, each word measured and deliberate. Mrs. Peterson's face flushed with shame as she took a long, careful look at Martha, perhaps for the first time. I'm not sure. It all happened so fast, she admitted, her voice trailing off, regret etched across her features. Michael turned back to the officers, his expression now stern and unwavering. So, let me get this straight. You received a vague report about a suspicious individual, and your immediate response was to come here and attempt to arrest my mother, a respected and long-standing member of this community, without any substantial evidence or provocation. The revelation of Martha's true identity and her son's esteemed position dramatically shifted the dynamics at play. The officers, once so confident in their authority, now appeared like chastened schoolchildren caught in a misdeed. The neighbors stood in stunned silence, the ugly truth of what had nearly transpired sinking in deeply, like a heavy stone in the pit of their stomachs. Martha, still seated in her familiar rocking chair, watched the scene unfold with a mixture of relief and profound sadness. The respect and authority her son commanded had, at this moment, saved her from what could have been a perilous situation. Yet, the painful truth that she needed rescuing at all served as a stark reminder of the biases that continued to plague their community. As Michael began to outline the various legal and ethical violations the officers had committed, Martha closed her eyes briefly, sending up a silent prayer of gratitude for her son's timely arrival. But she also prayed for understanding, for healing, and for the day when such incidents would be relegated to the past, never to be repeated. The revelation of Martha's true identity and her son's stature had set the stage for a confrontation that would resonate far beyond this single incident, casting shadows over the lives of everyone involved. In the tense moments that followed Michael's arrival, Martha found herself at a crossroads. The immediate danger had dissipated, yet the implications of what had just occurred weighed heavily on her heart and mind. As she observed her son passionately confronting the officers, a lifetime of experiences, both painful and triumphant, flashed before her eyes. She thought of the countless times she had faced discrimination and the struggles she had endured to raise her son in a world that often felt stacked against them. She also reflected on the young people in her community who might not be fortunate enough to have Judge Washington come to their aid when faced with such prejudice. In that pivotal moment, Martha made a decision that would not only alter the course of her life, but also the lives of many in her community. "Michael," she called out, her voice steady but firm, cutting through the tension like a clarion call. "That's enough, son." All eyes turned toward Martha as she slowly rose from her rocking chair, her dignity palpable as she straightened her back and lifted her chin, a symbol of strength and resilience. "What happened here today isn't just about me," she declared, her voice rising with conviction. "It's about every person who looks like me, who doesn't have a son in a position of power to protect them. We can't just let this go unnoticed." Michael looked at his mother, a mixture of concern and pride gleaming in his eyes. "What do you want to do, Mom?" he asked, sensing the weight of her words, understanding that a pivotal moment had just begun to unfold. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Martha took a deep, steadying breath, her resolve crystallizing at that moment. "I want to file an official complaint, not just against these officers, but against the entire department for allowing this kind of behavior to persist unchecked. I want to speak out, not only to tell my story, but to share the stories of others who have faced similar injustices. It's time for a change, and if I have to be the one to initiate that change, then so be it." The consequences of Martha's bold decision were immediate and far-reaching. The officers, already shaken by the unfolding events, now appeared genuinely alarmed at the thought of an official complaint coming from the mother of a respected judge. The neighbors who had gathered nearby whispered amongst themselves, some nodding in agreement while others shifted uncomfortably at the brewing conflict. After a moment's hesitation, Michael nodded with determination. "If that's what you want, Mom, I'll support you every step of the way. But are you sure? This won't be easy." Martha's eyes gleamed with fierce determination. "I've never run from a fight for what's right, and I'm not about to start now." In the weeks that followed, Martha's decision set into motion a series of events that would reverberate throughout the local community, shaking it to its core. The official complaint she filed prompted an internal investigation into the police department's practices, revealing numerous other incidents of racial profiling and misconduct that had been hidden from public view. As her story gained traction, it was picked up by local media and then national outlets, becoming a rallying cry for those advocating against systemic racism in law enforcement. Suddenly, Martha found herself thrust into the spotlight, giving interviews and speaking at community meetings. It was exhausting work for a woman of her age, yet she drew strength from the unwavering support of her son and from the knowledge that she was making a significant difference. However, the consequences of her courage were not all positive. Martha began receiving threatening phone calls and letters from individuals who perceived her actions as an attack on law enforcement. Some of her neighbors, feeling uncomfortable with the attention her case was drawing to the area, grew cold and distant, their earlier friendliness replaced with avoidance. The police department, feeling cornered and under siege, initially responded defensively. They attempted to frame Martha as a troublemaker, dredging up minor infractions from decades past to discredit her. But Martha's impeccable reputation, coupled with the clear evidence of misconduct in her case, only made their attempts backfire, fueling public outrage against the department instead. Michael, true to his word, stood steadfastly by his mother's side throughout the ordeal. Utilizing his connections in the legal community, he ensured that Martha's complaint was taken seriously and that she had the best legal representation available. However, his vocal support of his mother's cause began to create tension in his professional life. Whispers circulated about his impartiality, with suggestions that he should recuse himself from cases involving law enforcement, leading to ethical dilemmas that weighed heavily on him. As the weeks transformed into months, Martha's case emerged as a catalyst for broader discussions about race relations within the community. Town hall meetings were organized, bringing together residents, law enforcement, and community leaders to confront long-standing issues of bias and discrimination head-on. Martha found herself at the very center of these discussions, her quiet dignity and unwavering commitment to justice earning her respect, even from those who had initially opposed her. Martha also began working closely with local youth groups, sharing her experiences and encouraging young people to stand up for their rights while fostering dialogue and building bridges with law enforcement. She inspired a new generation to advocate for justice and equality, instilling in them the belief that their voices mattered. The strain of her newfound role as a community activist began to take its toll on Martha's health. There were nights when she lay awake, plagued by doubts about whether she had made the right decision, questioning if the cost to her peace and privacy was truly worth it. Yet, just when the weight of uncertainty threatened to overwhelm her, she would receive a letter from a young person inspired by her stand, or see a news report about positive changes being implemented within the police department. In those moments, she knew deep in her heart that she had chosen the right path. As the consequences of her courageous decision continued to unfold, Martha often found herself reflecting on the words she had spoken to Michael on that fateful day. "It's time for a change, and if I have to be the one to start it, then so be it." Her resolve remained unshaken, a testament to her enduring spirit in the face of adversity. She had no idea then just how far-reaching the change would be or how much it would demand of her. Yet, as she sat on her porch each evening, observing her neighborhood through a new lens, Martha felt a sense of purpose stronger than any she had ever known. The world around her, once familiar and comforting, now seemed charged with possibilities and challenges that beckoned her to engage more deeply. The journey ahead promised to be fraught with obstacles, but Martha Washington was ready to face it head-on, armed with a lifetime of wisdom and a newfound determination to seek justice, not just for herself but for her entire community. Each sunset brought with it a resolve that pushed her to become a catalyst for change, to stand tall against the injustices that had long been overlooked. As Martha's story gained traction and her fight for justice intensified, a secondary plot began to unfold, adding layers of complexity to an already tense situation. Officer Sarah Rodriguez, the young Hispanic woman who had witnessed Martha's confrontation, found herself increasingly troubled by the incident and its ramifications. Unlike her colleagues, who had closed ranks and defensively justified their actions, Sarah couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that they had gravely misjudged the situation and mishandled their interaction with Martha. Driven by a mix of guilt and a genuine desire for change, Sarah took it upon herself to document other instances of racial profiling and misconduct within the department. She began keeping a detailed journal, meticulously noting dates, times, and the officers involved in questionable incidents. Each entry weighed heavily on her conscience, revealing a troubling pattern of behavior that contradicted the values she believed the police force should uphold. Her good intentions, however, placed her in an increasingly precarious position within the department, isolating her from her peers who were resistant to acknowledging these issues. Meanwhile, Mrs. Peterson, the neighbor who had initially called the police on Martha, was grappling with her crisis of conscience. The public backlash against her had been severe, with many community members quick to label her as racist. Overwhelmed by guilt and the weight of her actions, Mrs. Peterson sought to make amends. She reached out to Martha, requesting a meeting to apologize in person, hoping to find a way to reconcile her mistake and learn from it. Their meeting, initially fraught with tension and awkwardness, marked a pivotal turning point. Martha, drawing on her lifetime of wisdom and her capacity for forgiveness, listened intently as Mrs. Peterson offered her tearful apology. In that moment, Martha shared her own experiences of living as a Black woman in America, recounting the challenges and prejudices she had faced. This heartfelt conversation sparked an unlikely friendship between the two women, transforming Mrs. Peterson from a former adversary into an unexpected ally in Martha's fight for justice. As these personal dramas unfolded, the broader community experienced its upheaval. The local city council, feeling the pressure from activists inspired by Martha's stand, began to debate measures aimed at increasing police accountability. This led to heated discussions that divided the community, with some passionately supporting reform while others staunchly defended the status quo. Judge Michael Washington found himself navigating increasingly treacherous waters. His vocal support for his mother's cause had made him a controversial figure within legal circles. Some colleagues on the bench quietly questioned his impartiality, wondering if his convictions were compromising his professional responsibilities. Yet, others admired his courage to stand up for justice, seeing him as a beacon of hope in a system that often felt resistant to change. Michael was forced to walk a fine line, balancing his commitment to his mother's fight and the weight of his judicial duties, all while feeling the eyes of the community watching his every move. Together, these intertwined narratives wove a complex tapestry of personal struggles and communal aspirations, all ignited by Martha's courageous stand against injustice. As the days turned into weeks, the ripple effects of their actions began to reshape not only their lives but the fabric of the entire community. The police department, under mounting pressure from various fronts, initiated a public relations campaign aimed at rehabilitating its tarnished image. They organized community outreach events and sensitivity training sessions for officers, striving to present a more compassionate and understanding front. Yet, these efforts were met with skepticism by many residents, who perceived them as superficial gestures designed to deflect attention from the need for substantive change. Officer Rodriguez found herself in a precarious position as she meticulously compiled a growing body of evidence detailing departmental misconduct. Each documented instance weighed heavily on her conscience as she wrestled with the decision of whether to become a whistleblower. Unexpectedly, she found a confidant in Judge Washington. Their clandestine meetings, charged with legal and ethical implications, added an undercurrent of tension to the evolving narrative, each session filled with both hope and apprehension. Inspired by her conversations with Martha, Mrs. Peterson took the initiative to launch a neighborhood project aimed at bridging the divide between longtime residents and newcomers. Her well-intentioned efforts often led to uncomfortable and tense moments, as deep-seated prejudices and misunderstandings surfaced, forcing the community to confront its biases head-on. As these various threads began to develop, they intersected in surprising ways. Officer Rodriguez's meticulous documentation emerged as crucial evidence for the City Council's burgeoning police reform initiatives. Simultaneously, Mrs. Peterson's neighborhood group evolved into a forum for discussing the broader implications of Martha's case, fostering a dialogue that many had avoided for too long. The stage was now set for these secondary plots to converge with the main narrative, culminating in a climactic event that would compel everyone involved to confront their biases, question their assumptions, and work collectively toward genuine understanding and meaningful change within their community. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. As the reverberations of Martha's courageous stand against injustice continued to ripple through the neighborhood, the relationships among the key players in this unfolding drama began to shift in unforeseen ways. Martha and Mrs. Peterson's unlikely friendship deepened, transcending their initial roles of victim and accuser. Their regular afternoon teas on Martha's porch became a symbol of reconciliation and personal growth, a shared space where understanding blossomed. One afternoon, as they settled in with steaming cups, Martha turned to Mrs. Peterson, using her first name for the first time. "You know, Mildred," she began, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "When I was your age, I never imagined I would be sitting here sharing tea with a white neighbor who once called the police on me." Mrs. Peterson's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Martha, I can't express how ashamed I am of my actions, but I am incredibly grateful for this opportunity to learn from you and grow." Their blossoming friendship did not go unnoticed. Neighbors, who had previously been wary of taking sides in the unfolding controversy, found themselves inspired by the example set by these two women. Gradually, the icy veneer of mistrust that had enveloped the community began to thaw. Meanwhile, the relationship between Officer Sarah Rodriguez and Judge Michael Washington transformed from cautious allies to trusted confidants. Their clandestine meetings, often taking place in the quiet corners of local parks, became a blend of tension and mutual respect. During one such meeting, Sarah laid bare her fears, her voice barely above a whisper. "Judge Washington, if I come forward with this information, my career will be over. But if I remain silent, how can I live with myself?" Feeling the weight of his ethical dilemma, he replied thoughtfully, "Sarah, the path of integrity is never easy, but it is always the right one. You must decide what kind of legacy you want to leave behind." At that moment, amidst the rustling leaves and distant laughter of children playing, they both understood that the choices they made would not only affect their lives, but could also catalyze change within their community. Together, they stood on the precipice of something significant, ready to confront the truths that had long been buried. Their shared commitment to justice, despite the personal costs, forged a profound bond that transcended their professional roles. Martha and Michael found themselves united not merely as mother and son, but as passionate advocates for a cause that loomed larger than their individual lives. Martha's relationship with Michael underwent a significant transformation. While they had always enjoyed a close connection, this new chapter turned them into partners in a shared mission. Michael, witnessing his mother's unyielding strength and wisdom, began to see her in a new light, as a true leader and activist. One serene evening, as they sat together on the weathered porch of Martha's home, the golden hues of the sunset enveloping them, Michael took his mother's hand in his. "Mom, I've always been proud of you," he said, his voice earnest and filled with emotion. "But what you're doing now is beyond anything I could have ever imagined. You're inspiring so many." Martha squeezed his hand affectionately, her eyes sparkling with pride. "Well, son, where do you think you got your sense of justice from?" "Certainly not those law books of yours," she replied with a playful smile. Their laughter, warm and genuine, danced on the evening breeze, a testament to the deep love and respect that had only grown stronger through the trials they faced together. This moment of connection served as a reminder that they were not just fighting for justice. They were nurturing a legacy of resilience and compassion. Even Martha's relationship with the wider community began to evolve in remarkable ways. People who had once regarded her as just another elderly neighbor now sought her out for guidance, recognizing her as a source of wisdom and moral authority. Young activists, energized by her courage, approached her for advice and mentorship, while longtime residents marveled at the inner fire that had always smoldered within their unassuming neighbor, now ignited into a blazing passion for justice. During a community meeting at the local church, a young black man stood up, his voice trembling with emotion. "Miss Washington," he said, tears glistening in his eyes, "seeing you stand up to those officers, hearing your stories, It's given me hope that change is not just a dream but a reality we can achieve." Martha's eyes misted over as she scanned the diverse faces in the crowd, all turned toward her with respect and admiration. In that moment, she realized that her stand for justice had transformed into a catalyst for collective growth and healing. Her voice, once merely one in a chorus, had become a rallying cry for those yearning for change. However, not all relationship changes were positive. The bonds between Officer Rodriguez and her police colleagues became increasingly strained as she continued her secret documentation of misconduct. Isolated at work, she felt the weight of suspicion bearing down on her, a palpable shift in the atmosphere as those around her sensed her wavering loyalty to the unwritten code of police solidarity. The camaraderie that had once defined her interactions with her peers began to erode, leaving her in a precarious position. Similarly, the once friendly relationship between Michael and some of his fellow judges began to cool as the controversy surrounding Martha's case intensified. Casual lunches and social invitations dwindled, replaced by the formality of brief nods exchanged in courthouse hallways, a stark contrast to the warm camaraderie they had once enjoyed. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension, as the challenges they faced laid bare the fractures within their professional circles. Yet even these strained relationships served a purpose, shedding light on the deep-seated issues that needed to be addressed for true reconciliation to occur. Each shift in dynamics highlighted the complex reality of the situation, reflecting the broader changes rippling through the community. As relationships ebbed and flowed, they created a tangled web of connections that mirrored the ongoing struggle for understanding and justice. Each interaction, whether it brought people closer together or pushed them apart, acted as a microcosm of the larger fight for equity and compassion. Martha, keenly observing these shifting dynamics, realized that the path to true change was not merely through laws and policies, but also through the painstaking work of building bridges between individuals. As she rocked gently on her porch, her heart full of hope, she watched the sunset on another day of this ongoing journey. She felt a burgeoning sense of optimism. The relationships being forged and tested in the crucible of their experiences were laying the groundwork for a more just and understanding community, a place where all voices could be heard and where the quest for justice could flourish. The long-anticipated day of the town hall meeting finally arrived, bringing with it an undeniable sense of tension that permeated the air of the community center. What had begun as a localized incident, a troubling encounter that many hoped would simply fade into the background, had transformed into a significant focal point for urgent discussions about racial justice, police reform, and the complex dynamics of community relations. As residents filed into the large auditorium, the space quickly filled with individuals representing diverse backgrounds and perspectives, alongside local officials and a swarm of media representatives eager to cover the unfolding event. In the front row, Martha Washington sat with her back straight and her eyes focused, flanked on her right by her steadfast friend Michael, and on her left by the ever-vocal Mrs. Peterson. Their presence spoke volumes, reflecting both concern and determination. Across the aisle, the police chief, accompanied by several officers, including the resolute officer Sarah Rodriguez, took their seats. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, laced with unspoken tension, as the mayor rose to call the meeting to order, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "We're here today," he began, projecting his voice to reach every corner of the hall, to address the incident involving. His words hung in the air, setting the stage for a discussion that promised to be anything but straightforward. The gathered community members were not merely there to dissect one event. They were there to confront a series of issues that had simmered beneath the surface for far too long. The meeting commenced with a semblance of civility as various community leaders stepped forward to share their perspectives, each offering insights that reflected their experiences and concerns. However, as the floor opened for public comments, the underlying fractures within the community became painfully clear. Angry voices began to rise from different corners of the auditorium, filling the space with a cacophony of discord. "The police were just doing their job," shouted one man, his face flushed with fury. "We can't tie their hands when they're trying to keep us safe." "And what about our safety?" countered a young black woman, her voice piercing through the noise. "Who keeps us safe from those who are supposed to protect us?" The tension escalated rapidly, morphing into a heated exchange as years of pent-up frustration, fear, and distrust bubbled to the surface. Community members and police supporters found themselves engaged in a passionate debate, their voices rising higher and higher, drowning out any attempts at civility. The mayor, struggling to maintain order amidst the chaos, realized that the situation was spiraling quickly out of control. In a pivotal moment, Officer Sarah Rodriguez stood up, her expression a mixture of determination and apprehension. "I have something to say," she called out, her voice cutting through the tumultuous din like a knife. All eyes turned to her as she made her way to the podium, her hands trembling slightly but her resolve firm. Sarah produced a thick folder from under her arm. "For months," she began, her voice gaining strength with each word, "I've been documenting incidents of racial profiling and misconduct within our department. What happened to Mrs. Washington wasn't an isolated incident. It's part of a troubling pattern, and it needs to stop." Her declaration sent shockwaves through the room. Chaos erupted as Sarah's fellow officers exchanged glances of disbelief, their expressions reflecting a mixture of shock and betrayal. The police chief's face turned an alarming shade of crimson as he sputtered incoherently, struggling to respond. Meanwhile, community members erupted into shouts, some applauding Sarah's courage, while others accused her of betraying her badge and her colleagues. In that critical moment, Martha rose to her feet. Despite her age, she seemed to radiate a sense of strength and purpose as she made her way to the podium. Sarah stepped aside, allowing Martha to take her place, her presence commanding immediate attention from all who were gathered. "Look at us," Martha began, her voice clear and unwavering. "Look at what we're doing to each other. This anger, this fear. This is exactly why we need change. But we can't achieve it by shouting each other down or by pointing fingers." Her words resonated deeply with everyone present, striking a chord that began to resonate with a collective yearning for understanding and reconciliation. As Martha continued to speak, a transformation began to take shape within the room. The previously overwhelming anger and fear that had dominated the atmosphere began to give way to something more profound, a shared recognition of their collective humanity and a mutual need for understanding. "We have a choice," Martha concluded, her gaze sweeping across the diverse crowd. "We can allow this moment to further divide us, or we can seize it as an opportunity to come together, to truly listen to each other, and to work towards meaningful, lasting change. The path ahead won't be easy, but I assure you, nothing worth achieving ever is." If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 4 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. As Martha's words lingered in the atmosphere, the climactic event had undeniably propelled the community into a pivotal moment of reckoning. The truth had been laid bare, exposing the raw and uncomfortable realities that had long been simmering beneath the surface. The pressing question now loomed. Could they harness this transformative moment to embark on the arduous journey of healing and change, or would the deep divisions that had surfaced prove insurmountable, leaving a lasting chasm in their community? In the aftermath of the tumultuous town hall meeting, Martha Washington found herself thrust into the heart of a community-wide initiative aimed at confronting and addressing the entrenched issues that had been illuminated. The days that followed were marked by intense discussions, fervent debates, and a whirlwind of activity as various factions sought to carve out a path forward in the face of uncertainty. Understanding the necessity for a more structured approach to conflict resolution, Martha, alongside Michael, Sarah Rodriguez, and other influential community leaders, decided to convene a series of smaller, more focused gatherings. They recognized that while the large public forum had served as a powerful catalyst for dialogue, it had also overwhelmed many attendees, making it difficult for genuine and meaningful exchanges to take place. These smaller groups provided a nurturing environment for more intimate conversations, allowing individuals to feel a greater sense of safety and comfort in expressing their authentic feelings and experiences. One such meeting brought together a rich tapestry of residents, including longtime community members who had witnessed its evolution, new homeowners eager to contribute, and local business owners concerned about the future. The atmosphere in the room was charged with tension as Martha prepared to open the discussion. "We're gathered here today," she began, her voice resonating with both gentleness and resolve, not to assign blame or cast judgment, but rather to listen and seek understanding among ourselves. Each person present has valid experiences and concerns that deserve to be acknowledged. Our collective task is to forge a way forward that respects and addresses all of these perspectives. As the conversation unfolded, it quickly became evident that the issues at hand extended far beyond just policing practices or racial profiling. Residents shared their feelings of disconnection from the community they had once known, fears about rising crime rates and declining property values, and the complex challenges of bridging cultural divides that had emerged as the neighborhood transformed. A longtime resident, an elderly white man with deep roots in the area, spoke up with a voice thick with emotion. "I've called this place home for 40 years, he said, his tone reflecting both frustration and sorrow, and at times, I feel like a stranger in my neighborhood. It's not merely about race for me. It's about feeling alienated in the very place I've lived and loved for decades." In response, a young black woman, her voice slightly trembling with vulnerability, added, "And we feel like outsiders in a space that should rightfully be our home as well. Can you understand what it's like to be perceived as a threat simply for existing in your community?" These candid and heartfelt exchanges, though painful, were both necessary and transformative. Martha and her team diligently worked to foster an environment where every voice could be heard and validated, all while gently encouraging participants to consider perspectives that differed from their own experiences and viewpoints. Simultaneously, Martha collaborated closely with Michael and Sarah to address the pressing issues within the police department. They organized crucial meetings between community members and police officers, facilitated by professional mediators who specialized in conflict resolution. These sessions were often fraught with tension and deep emotion, yet they provided an essential opportunity for both parties to see one another as human beings rather than adversaries locked in conflict. During one particularly powerful and transformative session, a young black man courageously opened up about his harrowing experiences of being repeatedly stopped and questioned by police officers. With deep emotion resonating in his voice, he shared, "I feel like I'm seen as a criminal just for walking down the street." The weight of his words hung heavily in the air, reflecting the pain and frustration of countless individuals who had faced similar treatment. A veteran police officer, visibly moved by the young man's testimony, responded thoughtfully, "I never realized how our actions were being perceived. We're trained to be vigilant, to protect and serve, but I see now that vigilance without understanding can often come across as prejudice." This moment of connection and empathy between the officer and the young man was a significant turning point, highlighting the importance of open dialogue in fostering understanding and healing. Martha, who had been facilitating these discussions, recognized that while these moments of genuine connection were small, they represented crucial steps in the larger conflict resolution process. She understood that true and lasting change would take time, patience, and sustained effort. Yet, she felt a sense of hope with each breakthrough, knowing that these interactions were laying the foundation for a more equitable community. As part of their ongoing resolution efforts, Martha and her dedicated team also collaborated closely with city officials to implement concrete, actionable changes within the community. They advocated for increased transparency in police practices, championed the establishment of community oversight boards, and played a pivotal role in developing new training programs for officers that focused on cultural sensitivity, implicit bias awareness, and de-escalation techniques. These initiatives aimed to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community, fostering trust and accountability. However, the path to resolution was anything but smooth. The journey was fraught with setbacks and moments of tension that threatened to unravel the progress they had made. A police shooting in a neighboring city reignited long-standing tensions, leading to widespread protests and urgent calls for more immediate action. The community was on edge, and the fragile bonds that had begun to form were put to the test. In response to these challenges, Martha organized a peace walk through the neighborhood, a deliberate choice designed to promote unity rather than division. Unlike a traditional protest, this event aimed to bring together people from diverse backgrounds in a spirit of collaboration and shared purpose. Residents of all races and walks of life walked side by side, many holding hands or engaging in heartfelt conversations with neighbors they had never spoken to before. The atmosphere was one of solidarity and hope, a powerful testament to the community's desire for understanding and healing. As the weeks turned into months, the impact of their conflict resolution efforts began to manifest in tangible ways. Reports of racial profiling decreased significantly, while community satisfaction with local law enforcement began to rise. The Community Oversight Board, which faced some initial challenges, was emerging as an effective tool for fostering accountability and transparency, giving residents a voice in policing matters. Martha's approach to conflict resolution, which emphasized listening, empathy, and finding common ground, began to ripple outward, influencing other aspects of community life. Neighborhood associations adopted similar techniques for addressing local issues, fostering a collaborative spirit. Schools implemented educational programs aimed at teaching students about diversity, empathy, and conflict resolution, instilling these values in the next generation. However, Martha and her team also came to understand that not all conflicts could be fully resolved. Some wounds ran too deep, and certain disagreements were too fundamental to be easily reconciled. They learned to measure success not merely in terms of complete resolution, but in the progress and healing that could be achieved along the way. They recognized that harmony lies in creating spaces where difficult conversations could occur respectfully and productively. As their conflict resolution efforts continued to unfold, Martha found herself reflecting on the profound words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whom she had marched alongside in her youth. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. These words inspired her, reminding her that the journey toward justice is ongoing, requiring steadfast commitment and courage from all members of the community. Martha realized that their work was an integral part of a much longer arc, with each small step they took contributing to a larger journey toward a more just and equitable society. While the journey was far from over, she felt a burgeoning sense of hope that invigorated her spirit. She understood that by actively helping to resolve these conflicts within their community, they were not merely addressing immediate issues. They were laying the essential groundwork for a more united and compassionate community that would benefit generations to come. The months filled with intense community dialogue, significant policy changes, and profound personal growth marked a pivotal turning point for both Martha and the entire neighborhood. What had begun as a frightening confrontation on her porch, a moment of tension that shook her to her core, had evolved into a powerful movement for change that resonated throughout every aspect of community life. This remarkable shift brought forth not only new challenges, but also exciting opportunities that would chart a fresh path for Martha and her allies. One particular evening, as Martha sat on her porch reflecting on the incredible progress they had achieved together, her phone rang, breaking the stillness of the moment. It was an unexpected call from the mayor of a neighboring city, who had heard about the transformative work taking place in Martha's community. Intrigued and inspired by their efforts, he wanted to know if Martha would be willing to share her experiences and strategies with other communities grappling with similar challenges. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 5 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. This opportunity presented Martha with a momentous decision, one that weighed heavily on her mind. Sharing their story on a broader platform could amplify its impact beyond her wildest dreams, reaching others who could benefit from their journey. However, she also understood that this would require stepping even further into the public eye and taking on responsibilities that felt daunting, particularly for a woman of her age. After careful consideration and lengthy discussions with Michael, Sarah, and her other close allies, Martha reached a momentous conclusion. She decided to accept the mayor's invitation, viewing it as a chance to extend the reach and influence of their work well beyond the confines of their neighborhood. "We have a chance here," Martha explained passionately to her core group of supporters, which included Michael, Sarah, and Mrs. Peterson. "What we've started in our community could be the spark that ignites a much larger movement for change in police-community relations across the country." The group buzzed with excitement at the idea, yet they were also acutely aware of the challenges that lay ahead. Expanding their efforts would necessitate additional resources, careful organization, and a willingness to engage with communities that might be even more resistant to change than parts of their own had been. With the enthusiastic backing of her supporters, Martha began to outline a comprehensive plan for a new initiative. Its mission would be to provide crucial resources, targeted training, and unwavering support to communities striving to confront issues of racial bias in policing and improve relationships between law enforcement and the communities they serve. They decided to name this initiative Bridges of Understanding, envisioning it as a platform that would bring together community leaders, law enforcement officials, and social justice advocates. This initiative would offer a holistic approach to community reform, drawing on the invaluable lessons they had gleaned from their own experiences. As news of this new direction spread through the community, it fostered a renewed sense of purpose among its members. Many individuals who had been actively engaged in the local efforts recognized an opportunity to contribute to a larger cause that extended beyond their immediate surroundings. Local businesses stepped up to provide support, schools began incorporating conflict resolution techniques into their curricula, and even some police officers, motivated by Sarah's inspiring example, volunteered to share their experiences and insights with other departments. However, this new direction was not without its challenges. Some community members expressed concern that the emphasis on national issues might detract from their ongoing local efforts, fearing that the unique nuances of their neighborhood could be overlooked. Others worried about the increased scrutiny that would inevitably accompany a higher public profile. Despite these apprehensions, Martha remained steadfast in her belief that they were on the right path. As she stood in front of the newly rented office space that would serve as the headquarters for Bridges of Understanding, a mix of excitement and trepidation washed over her. The journey that had commenced with a frightening confrontation on her porch had led to this defining moment, the inception of a movement that had the potential to influence and transform communities across the nation. The turning point had finally come, bringing with it a new direction, not just for Martha, but for everyone who had been part of this transformative experience, uniting them in a shared vision of a more just and compassionate world. As Martha took her first steps into the office, a profound sense of determination enveloped her. The moment felt significant, almost transformative. She understood that the real work was just beginning, and she was ready to embrace the challenges that lay ahead. In the months following the launch of Bridges of Understanding, Martha knew she would be navigating uncharted territory, both personally and within the community. Each morning, as she gazed into the mirror, she found herself reflecting deeply on the incredible journey that had brought her to this pivotal moment in her life. The woman looking back at her was both familiar and strange. The same face that had weathered nearly 8 decades of experiences, framed by soft silver strands of hair and etched with the lines of countless stories. Yet, there was a spark in her eyes, a new fire fueled by purpose, understanding, and an unwavering resolve to create meaningful change. Through her journey, Martha recognized that she had cultivated a resilience she had never realized she possessed. Each setback had been a test of her strength and character, yet she emerged from each challenge with a renewed sense of commitment. The painful confrontation with the police had been a significant turning point, igniting a community-wide dialogue that was long overdue. The subsequent upheaval within her community had shaken her to her core, forcing her to confront deep-seated issues of racial injustice and societal inequalities. Spearheading a national initiative to address these concerns was daunting, yet it also revealed her capacity for leadership and advocacy. Martha's perspective on community dynamics and social transformation had shifted dramatically. While she had always held a strong belief in the power of individual action to instigate change, she now understood how a single incident could act as a catalyst for a much larger movement. It dawned on her how personal stories, her own and those of others, could serve as powerful narratives that drove social change. She realized the critical importance of bridging divides, creating safe spaces for difficult conversations, and leveraging the power of empathy to dismantle the deeply entrenched biases that had long plagued her community. Perhaps the most profound area of growth for Martha was her evolution as a leader. Once content to be a quiet pillar of her community, she had found herself thrust into the public spotlight, emerging as a prominent voice advocating for change in police-community relations. This new role demanded far more from her than she could have ever anticipated. She learned to navigate the complexities of media interviews, articulate her vision to diverse audiences, and build coalitions among groups with varying interests and perspectives. Each encounter brought its own set of challenges. She had to address skepticism, confront opposition, and inspire hope among those who felt disillusioned. The weight of this newfound public responsibility often bore down on her, a constant reminder that her words and actions carried significant consequences, potentially impacting communities across the nation. There were moments of self-doubt, times when she questioned whether she truly was the right person to lead this movement. In those difficult moments, she would recall the words she had spoken to Michael on that fateful day. "It's time for a change, and if I have to be the one to start it, then so be it." Those words became her anchor, grounding her amidst the turbulence of her journey and reminding her of the importance of perseverance. Martha also took time to reflect on how her relationships had evolved during this transformative period. Her bond with Michael had deepened significantly. The transition from mother and son to partners in a shared mission brought them closer than ever before. They navigated the complexities of their roles together, drawing strength from one another as they faced the challenges ahead. Unexpected alliances had emerged as well, such as her friendship with Mrs. Peterson. What began as a chance meeting had blossomed into a powerful collaboration, demonstrating the very essence of the change they were collectively striving to achieve. Their partnership symbolized the potential for unity across generational and racial divides, serving as a beacon of hope for others in the community. Moreover, Martha's relationship with Sarah Rodriguez had undergone a profound transformation. Once merely colleagues within a contentious system, they had forged a meaningful partnership that demonstrated the possibility of growth and redemption within law enforcement. Sarah's willingness to confront the realities of policing and work alongside Martha was a testament to the changing dynamics of their community and the healing potential. As she prepared for yet another day filled with meetings, interviews, and strategy sessions, Martha felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Despite the myriad challenges that lay ahead, the incident that had catalyzed her journey had stripped away any remnants of complacency, compelling her to confront uncomfortable truths about society and herself. It had been a transformative journey, one that ultimately led to significant growth, both personally and collectively. Martha Washington, the elderly woman who had once felt vulnerable and bullied on her porch, had emerged as something much greater: an advocate, a community leader, and a symbol of resilience and change. Looking to the future, Martha felt a renewed sense of readiness to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Armed with newfound wisdom, stronger convictions, and an unwavering commitment to justice and equality, she was prepared to continue her important work. As she picked up a framed photo from her desk, an image capturing a moment of joy and solidarity with her core team of supporters, including Michael, Sarah, and Mrs. Peterson, she felt a surge of inspiration. This photograph served as a daily reminder of how far they had come together and the crucial work that still lay ahead. Martha understood that while the road would be long and fraught with obstacles, each step taken would contribute to a larger movement for justice and equality. With each passing day, she felt more connected to the community she sought to uplift, driven by the knowledge that true change was possible. She inhaled deeply, letting the weight of responsibility settle over her like a comforting cloak, ready to face the day and all that it would bring. With a deep breath that filled her lungs with the crisp morning air and a determined smile that radiated hope, Martha stepped outside to embrace another day devoted to the change she yearned to see in the world. This was not merely a task for her. It was a calling that had ignited her spirit and fueled her resolve. The journey she had undertaken had brought about profound growth, both personally and in her capacity as a leader. She felt a strong sense of purpose, knowing that every challenge she faced and every community she assisted represented another crucial step toward the creation of a more just and equitable society. This vision, which had been born out of a moment of injustice experienced on her porch, had blossomed into something far larger and more impactful than she had ever anticipated. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 6 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. As Martha stood before the podium, preparing to deliver her keynote address at the National Conference on Community Policing and Racial Equity, she took a moment to survey the diverse and dynamic audience before her. Law enforcement officers clad in uniforms, passionate community activists adorned with colorful pins and shirts proclaiming their causes, influential policymakers, and concerned citizens from all walks of life had gathered in this space, united by the promise of a new and collaborative approach to tackling the long-standing issues of racial bias and the complexities of police-community relations. In that moment of reflection, Martha realized she was standing at the culmination of a journey that had begun with a frightening and confrontational experience on her porch. This confrontation had transformed into a powerful movement, fostering change not just within her community, but rippling out to affect countless others across the nation. The themes that had emerged throughout her experiences, resilience in the face of injustice, the transformative power of community to drive change, the critical importance of open dialogue, and the potential for personal growth to catalyze societal transformation, were all vividly represented in the gathering of individuals in front of her. As she began her speech, Martha wove these themes together seamlessly, reinforcing the intricate interconnectedness of personal experiences and the systemic changes that were desperately needed. She recounted her confrontation, reframing it not merely as a story of victimhood, but rather as a pivotal catalyst for transformation that had compelled her to take action. She illuminated the stories of Sarah, Mrs. Peterson, and many others from her community, showcasing how their willingness to confront uncomfortable truths had led to powerful and impactful changes in their lives and the lives of those around them. Our journey toward justice and equity is far from over, she concluded, her voice resonating with unwavering conviction and passion. But what we've learned through our collective struggles is that meaningful change begins with every one of us. It starts in our hearts and minds, in our willingness to confront our biases, to truly listen to experiences that differ from our own, and to work collaboratively towards a common goal. Every conversation we engage in, every policy change we advocate for, and every moment of understanding we cultivate brings us one step closer to the society we aspire to build. A society where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. The applause that followed was a thunderous wave of approval, echoing throughout the venue. It was more than just a response to her words. It was a powerful affirmation of a newly envisioned framework for police-community relations and a deeper commitment to social justice. As Martha stepped down from the podium, she felt a profound sense of both closure and the exhilarating promise of new beginnings. The ordeal that had begun on her porch had led to this moment of transformation, not only for her but for communities across the nation that were now inspired to take action. In that resounding applause, and in the shining faces of the audience members who were visibly moved by her message, Martha saw the promise of a future where justice, understanding, and equality were not just lofty ideals discussed in academic circles, but lived realities for everyone. It was a future she was now actively helping to create, one heartfelt conversation at a time, one community initiative at a time, and one changed mind at a time. As she left the stage, her heart swelled with hope and determination. She knew that this was just the beginning of a much larger journey. The connections forged here today would lead to collaborations and actions that would ripple out into the world. With each person who felt inspired by her words, she envisioned a growing network of advocates who would join hands to challenge injustices, dismantle barriers, and foster understanding across divides. Martha looked forward to the days ahead, eager to continue the work of healing, bridging gaps, and nurturing the seeds of change that had already begun to sprout in the hearts of so many. The community she once feared was shifting and growing, evolving into a space of solidarity and collective action. It was a powerful testament to the belief that even in the face of adversity, hope and transformation were not just possible, they were inevitable. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey through Martha Washington's story. We've witnessed her incredible resilience in the face of adversity and the importance of standing up for justice and equality. What have you learned from Martha's experiences? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please comment below with one insight you've gained and how you plan to bring it into your own life. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps us spread these important messages further.